Before we speak of desire or fulfillment or the unseen movements of life, let us pause for a moment and consider a simple truth that has been whispered through all ages, yet rarely heard. You do not bring things into being by effort, nor by pleading, nor by the repetition of words. You bring them into being by the state of feeling from which you live. Long before any event appears upon the surface of your world, it has already been accepted inwardly as real. And what you accept inwardly, not as hope but as fact, must in its own time objectify itself. And this is not poetry, nor is it metaphor. It is law. The feeling with which you clothe an idea determines whether it remains a dream or becomes an experience. Most men and women pass their lives attempting to change conditions, unaware that conditions are only the shadow cast by an inner mood. Tonight, if you will listen quietly, not to be entertained, but to recognize something you already know, you may discover that the secret you have sought has always been resting in the way you feel when no one is watching. The foundation of all manifestation is consciousness itself, not consciousness as something vague or abstract, but consciousness as your very sense of being, the quiet awareness that says, I am. Before you say what you are, before you name yourself, before you describe your circumstances, there is this simple, undeniable feeling of existence. This awareness is the creative power. Everything that appears in your world is first accepted within this awareness as natural, as fitting, as true. You do not experience what you want, you experience what you consent to be real. Most people believe that desire is something external, something they move toward. They say, I want this, or I hope for that, and they wait for the world to respond. But desire is not a signal of absence. Desire is a summons from a state already prepared for you. It is life inviting you to occupy a new position of consciousness. The mistake is not in wanting, but in wanting while remaining loyal to the feeling of not having. To desire a thing and to feel oneself separate from it is to keep it perpetually at a distance. Feeling, in this sense, has nothing to do with emotion as the world understands it. It is not excitement, nor strain, nor intensity. Feeling is the inward sense of reality. It is the quiet knowing that something is so. You may sit in a room and feel secure without excitement. You may know you are loved without constant reassurance. In the same way, you may know something is yours without seeing it. This knowing is feeling, and this feeling is the creative act. When you imagine, you are not forming pictures for amusement. You are selecting a state. Every imaginal act carries with it a feeling tone, and that tone determines whether the act is creative or idle. To imagine wealth while feeling anxious is to select anxiety, not wealth. To imagine harmony while feeling resentment is to remain in conflict. The image is secondary, the feeling is primary. Images come and go, but feeling persists, and what persists hardens into fact. There is a vast difference between thinking of a fulfilled desire and thinking from it. To think of it is to observe it as something other than yourself. To think from it is to let it color your perception of everything else. When a state is occupied, it no longer feels unusual. It feels natural. You do not ask how it will come about. You do not watch the clock. You do not strain. You simply live from that premise. And life, faithful servant that it is, rearranges itself to reflect your occupancy. The world has taught you to believe that change begins on the outside and works its way inward. Yet every significant change you have ever known began as a subtle shift within, a decision quietly made, an assumption gently accepted, a feeling that settled in without fanfare. You did not will these things into being. You allowed them. You agreed with them. You gave them residence within your awareness. If you examine your own experience honestly, you will see that the events of your life are not random. They follow the pattern of your habitual feelings, not the feelings you express publicly, but the ones you return to when the day is done. The feeling you carry about yourself, about life, about what is possible for you is the state from which you are living. And no technique, no affirmation, no outer effort can outweigh a state consistently occupied. This is why so many grow weary in their attempts to change. They try to force a result while secretly feeling unworthy, doubtful, or resigned. They speak words of confidence while inwardly consenting to defeat. And life, which does not hear words but responds to feeling, faithfully mirrors the deeper truth. There is no judgment in this, there is only perfect correspondence. To understand that feeling is the secret is not to add another task to your life. It is to remove effort. It is to recognize that creation is already finished, and your role is simply to choose where you stand. You do not create states, you enter them. You do not make things happen, you accept what is already so in consciousness. The moment you feel the wish fulfilled, not with excitement but with quiet acceptance, you have done all that is required. At first, this may seem elusive because the mind is accustomed to striving. It wants methods and schedules and visible progress. But feeling does not submit to force, it yields only to familiarity. You begin not by demanding a new feeling, but by noticing the one you already live in. You observe without condemnation, you become aware of the assumptions you have taken for granted. And as awareness grows, choice becomes possible. The shift from desiring to being is subtle, almost imperceptible. It does not announce itself. One day, you simply realize that you are no longer trying to convince yourself. The idea feels settled. The question has faded. You find yourself thinking, speaking, and responding from a new center. This is the sign that the state has been entered, and once entered, it must externalize. For the world has no option but to echo the feeling from which it is viewed. Remain with this understanding gently. Do not rush ahead. Let it unfold in you as a recognition rather than an instruction. For what you are hearing is not something new being added to you, but something old being remembered. And as this remembrance deepens, the restless effort to make life conform will give way to a quiet confidence that life is already responding, even now, to the feeling you are willing to call your own. As this understanding settles, the question naturally arises not as words, but as experience. How does one live from a feeling rather than merely visit it? The answer is not found in effort, but in attention. Every moment of the day, you are inwardly affirming something about yourself and your world. These affirmations are not spoken aloud, they are felt. They appear as quiet reactions, inner conversations, and unchallenged assumptions. And it is here, in these unnoticed moments, that states are either maintained or abandoned. Most of life is lived inwardly. Long before you speak, you have already spoken within. Long before you act, you have already consented inwardly to a certain outcome. The outer act is only the final echo of an inner agreement. If you listen closely to yourself, you will hear the tone of your state in the way you interpret events, in the conclusions you draw without evidence, in what you expect from others before they speak. These are not habits of thought so much as habits of feeling. Persistence, then, is not persistence in repetition, but persistence in loyalty. Loyalty to an assumption about yourself. Loyalty to a quiet inner knowing that does not seek permission from circumstances. You do not persist by forcing the mind to hold an image, but by returning again and again to the feeling that this is simply who you are now. Just as a man does not need to remind himself daily of his name, the one who has entered a state does not need to convince himself of its reality. There will be moments when appearances seem to contradict your assumption. This is inevitable, for the outer world moves more slowly than the inner shift that precedes it. These moments are not tests sent to discourage you, they are invitations to notice where you are truly dwelling. When confronted with an appearance that denies your inward acceptance, you're not asked to fight it, but to feel from a deeper place. To ask yourself quietly, who am I being right now? And to return gently to the state you have chosen. Inner conversations play a powerful role here, for they reveal the position you occupy. If inwardly you explain yourself, defend yourself, or rehearse disappointment, you are confessing a state without realizing it. But if inwardly you speak from fulfillment, not in words but in tone, you are confirming your new residence. These inner dialogues are not something to control harshly, but something to notice and allow to soften. As the state changes, the conversations change naturally. You may discover that effort arises when the state is not yet familiar. This effort is not failure, it is simply a sign that you are in transition. Do not condemn yourself for it. Familiarity grows through gentle return, not through pressure. Each time you notice yourself slipping back into the old feeling, you're being given an opportunity to choose again. And each choice, however small, deepens the groove of the new state. It is important to understand that feeling does not mean pretending. Pretending is strained and hollow. Feeling is settled and natural. When a state is truly accepted, it does not require constant attention. It operates quietly beneath the surface, influencing perception and response without effort. You begin to react differently without trying. You find yourself expecting different outcomes without planning to. This is the evidence that the assumption has taken root. Faith, in this context, is not belief in something unseen, but rest in something accepted. It is the absence of inner argument. When you no longer feel the need to ask whether it will happen, you have entered faith. And faith is not dramatic, it is calm, it is ordinary. It feels like the end of a question rather than the beginning of a struggle. As you move through your days, you may notice that the desire itself begins to soften. This does not mean it is fading, it means it is being absorbed. What once felt like longing now feels like quiet expectation or even neutrality. This neutrality is not indifference, it is acceptance. It is the feeling you have toward things you know are already yours. You do not yearn for them. You simply include them in your sense of self. Remain attentive but not tense. Watch your inward posture more than your outer actions. Life will give you countless opportunities to identify yourself. In each moment, without strain, you are choosing where you stand. And as you continue to stand in the feeling of the wish fulfilled, not as a performance, but as a quiet truth, you will find that effort gives way to ease, and striving gives way to a gentle certainty that does not need to announce itself. As this certainty deepens, something subtle yet profound begins to occur. The desire that once occupied your attention now recedes into the background of your awareness, not because it has been forgotten, but because it has been incorporated. It no longer feels like something you are reaching for, but something you are standing upon. This is the natural movement from practice into embodiment, from conscious choosing into effortless being. Identity is nothing more than the state you most consistently return to. It is not fixed by birth, nor defined by history, but established by feeling. You do not become a new self through effort. You discover that you are already that self by consenting to the feeling that implies it. When this consent becomes habitual, it solidifies into identity. And identity, once assumed, expresses itself without instruction. At this stage, surrender takes on a new meaning. It is not resignation, nor is it passivity. It is the release of the need to manage outcomes. When you are truly living from a state, you no longer watch life anxiously for confirmation. You allow events to arrange themselves without interference. You trust not because you are hopeful, but because there is nothing left to prove. The state itself is sufficient. There is a great rest that accompanies this realization. The mind grows quieter not because you have silenced it, but because it no longer has a problem to solve. The old habit of checking, measuring, and comparing fades naturally. You find yourself present in the moment, responding simply without the inner tension that once accompanied desire. This presence is not cultivated. It emerges when resistance dissolves. You may notice that life begins to feel simpler, not necessarily easier in appearance, but clearer in meaning. Events are no longer interpreted as obstacles or signs to be analyzed. They are received as movements within a larger pattern that no longer concerns you. You do what feels natural, you speak when moved to speak, and you act without the sense of striving. This is not detachment from life, but intimacy with it. When a state is fully occupied, there is no urge to convince others or to speak of what you have accepted inwardly. Silence becomes natural. Confidence no longer needs expression. The feeling of being complete within yourself replaces the need for validation. This quiet assurance is not pride, it is alignment. It is the sense of being at home in your own awareness. In this resting place, imagination continues its work, but now without effort. Images arise and dissolve gently, no longer charged with longing. They are like familiar thoughts, pleasant but unimportant. The creative act has already been accomplished in feeling, and imagination simply reflects what has been accepted. There is nothing left to do because doing has given way to being. It is here that many fear they are letting go too much, as though effort were required to sustain reality. But effort was never the sustaining force. Feeling was. And feeling, once stabilized, does not need guarding. It remains because it has become natural. You do not fear losing what you are, and so you do not lose it. Life responds to this naturalness with equal ease. Manifestation, though the word itself is unnecessary now, unfolds as a matter of course. Not always in the forms anticipated by the mind, but always in ways that are faithful to the state assumed. And because you are no longer watching for results, their arrival feels unsurprising, even ordinary. There is a quiet dignity in this way of living. No urgency, no anxiety, no need to hurry the process. Time becomes less of a concern, for you are no longer measuring distance between yourself and fulfillment. Fulfillment is where you stand. And from this standpoint, life moves freely, unobstructed by doubt or impatience. Remain here gently, not holding, not expecting, not waiting, simply being. Allow the feeling that has carried you this far to deepen without effort. Let it settle into the background of your awareness, where it can do its work unseen. And as you rest in this quiet knowing, you may find that the world, in its own perfect way, continues to confirm what you no longer need to ask. And yet, even in this resting, there is a further deepening that comes not through effort, but through quiet recognition. You begin to notice that the sense of self you once defended so carefully has softened. The old identity built from reactions, memories, and expectations no longer feels solid. In its place, there is a spaciousness, a gentle neutrality from which life is perceived without distortion. This is not loss, it is freedom. At this level, feeling is no longer something you attempt to generate, it is something you allow. You no longer ask, how should I feel to create this? Because the question itself belongs to an earlier stage. Instead, you remain attentive to what feels true now. And what feels true now, when unopposed, expands of its own accord. Truth does not need encouragement, it only needs permission. You may observe that desires still arise, but they arrive differently. They do not disturb your peace or pull you into longing. They appear as gentle preferences, almost like quiet suggestions from within. There is no sense of lack attached to them. They do not say, "Without this, I am incomplete." They simply say, "This too may be expressed." And because there is no resistance, no urgency, they pass easily from inner acceptance into outer experience. Here, one begins to understand that manifestation was never about acquiring things, but about releasing false boundaries. Every fulfilled desire is merely the outward sign that a limitation has been dissolved inwardly. When the limitation goes, the expression follows naturally. Life is not persuaded to give, it is allowed to show what was always waiting behind the barrier of doubt. The mind, which once demanded constant reassurance, now serves quietly. Thoughts arise and pass without clinging. You no longer identify yourself by them. You see that thoughts are movements within awareness, not definitions of it. And because you no longer argue with them or attempt to replace them forcefully, they lose their power to disturb. The feeling of being remains undisturbed, whole, sufficient. This is where true trust reveals itself. Not trust in a process, nor trust in an outcome, but trust in being itself. You trust that life knows how to move. You trust that consciousness, having accepted a state, does not forget it. You trust without watching. And this trust is not something you practice. It is something that emerges when the need to control dissolves. From this place, even waiting changes its meaning. Waiting is no longer filled with anticipation or concern. It becomes simply living, each moment complete in itself. You no longer stand between now and some future moment where fulfillment will arrive. Fulfillment has already colored the present, and so time loosens its grip. Days pass without the weight they once carried. You may find that others sense this change in you, though they may not understand it. There is a quiet steadiness in your presence, a lack of argument with life, a willingness to let things be as they are while knowing inwardly that movement is already underway. This does not make you passive, it makes you precise. Your actions arise from clarity rather than reaction. Even when challenges appear, they no longer threaten your foundation. They are seen as passing forms, not final statements. You do not deny them, nor do you dramatize them. You meet them from the feeling of being anchored, and in doing so, you discover that many difficulties dissolve simply by not being resisted or feared. Feeling, once stabilized, neutralizes opposition without effort, and so the journey completes itself without fanfare. There is no moment where you declare yourself finished. There is only the gradual realization that you are no longer seeking a secret, you are living it. Feeling has become your natural atmosphere, not something you return to, but something you never truly leave. Remain here, if only quietly. Let this understanding continue to deepen without your supervision. Do not try to hold it. Do not try to repeat it. Allow it to live through you in the most ordinary moments of your day, for it is there, in the simplicity of being, that the law expresses itself most perfectly, without sound, without struggle, and without end.